Your cheap clothes match your cheap lifestyle, Vanessa sneered, pointing at my plain black dress at Grandma Eleanor's funeral. The mourners fell silent, listening. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. The diamond watch on her wrist would cost a month's salary for most people. Beside her stood Brian, with that familiar arrogant attitude. Still struggling at your age? Vanessa smiled with fake kindness. Some people are just born for success. That's when a warm hand touched my back. Everything all right? Michael asked calmly. Vanessa's smile faltered. She hadn't expected me to have company. Mr. Ellis, I hear your company is facing financial difficulties, Michael said to Brian, whose confidence visibly cracked. Little did they know that the homeless woman they'd rejected years ago was about to change everything. 5 years ago. Rain sliced through the darkness as I stood shivering on Vanessa's doorstep. My business suit, once a symbol of my success, now clung to me like a wet shroud. 5 years ago, I had been Olivia Westbrook, respected CFO. That night, I was just another desperate soul with nowhere to go. The door finally opened. Vanessa's perfectly made-up face shifted from annoyance to recognition, then quickly to disgust. Olivia. Her voice cut through the sound of pouring rain. What are you doing here? You look terrible. I need help, my voice cracked. I've lost everything, my job, my apartment, my savings. I watched her step back, as if my misfortune might be contagious. Behind her, the warm glow of her luxurious foyer mocked me. You brought this on yourself, she said sharply. What did you expect would happen when you exposed your company? They were dumping toxic chemicals into the river, I said, my voice growing stronger despite my shivering. Children were getting sick. I couldn't stay silent. Always the righteous one, Vanessa rolled her eyes. Well, your righteousness cost you everything, didn't it? From inside the house, a child's voice called out. Mommy, who's at the door? No one important, Ethan. Go back to your homework. The words stung more than the freezing rain. I just need a place to stay for a few days. Please, Vanessa. We're family. Family. She laughed, the sound brittle and harsh. Once you decide that your sexuality is more important than anything else, you are no longer family. Brian appeared behind her, his arm sliding around Vanessa's waist. His eyes held nothing but contempt. You'll just have to live with the consequences, he said with a wan smile. You can't go around accusing successful businesses and expect to walk away unscathed. I have nowhere else to go, I pleaded, hating how desperate I sounded. Vanessa looked me up and down. What would the neighbors think? You look like a homeless. I am homeless right now, I whispered. That's what happens when you lose everything. She sighed. This isn't our problem, Olivia. You made your choice. I noticed Ethan peeking around the corner, his innocent eyes filled with confusion and a hint of sympathy. For a moment, I thought he might speak up. But Vanessa quickly ushered him away. Go upstairs, Ethan. Now. You have 3 beautiful children, I said quietly. I've never even met them properly. And you won't, Brian cut in. We're not exposing our children to this. He gestured at me as if I were something unpleasant. We're done here, Vanessa said firmly. I suggest you find a shelter. That's where people like you go, right? I stood frozen, stunned by her cruelty. I'm still your sister. Not anymore, she replied coldly. Sisters help each other. They don't destroy everything and then come begging. The door closed in my face with such finality that I flinched. Through the frosted glass, I watched their silhouettes move away, returning to their warm, safe world while I stood alone in the storm. That night, I found myself at the Riverside Community Shelter. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood in line with others who had their own stories of loss. First time? Asked an older woman, her weathered face kind. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. It gets easier, she said, though her eyes suggested otherwise. Remember that this isn't the end of your story. I wished I could believe her. That night, lying on a thin mattress surrounded by strangers, I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but my faith in human connection, in family bonds, in the idea that doing the right thing would be rewarded. The company I had exposed, Meridian Enterprises, had made sure I would never work in finance again. They had blacklisted me, spread rumors, questioned my competence. They had taken everything except my knowledge and my conviction. Weeks later, on my last day at the shelter, I noticed a man in a well-tailored suit speaking with the administrator. "I'm here as part of the legal aid program," he was saying. "There are rights these people have that aren't being addressed. Mr. Clark, while we appreciate your concern, we're doing the best we can with limited resources. But best we can doesn't override legal obligations," the man, Mr. Clark, responded. "These people deserve dignity and proper support." Our eyes met across the room. Something in his gaze shifted, though we had never met. "Are you leaving?" he asked, noticing my small bag. I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "Do you have somewhere to go?" His question was direct but gentle, without judgment. "I'm working on it," I lied. He studied me, then handed me his business card. "Michael Clark, attorney. I do pro bono work for people unfairly treated by the system. If you need assistance, or just someone to listen, call me." I took the card, surprised by the simple human connection. "Thank you," I said, my voice rusty from disuse. Michael's business card sat on the tiny table in my new single-room apartment for 3 days before I finally called him. It wasn't much of an apartment, just a bed, bathroom, and kitchenette, but after months in shelters, it felt like a palace. "Olivia Westbrook," I said when he answered. "We met at Riverside Shelter last week." "I remember," he replied, his voice warm. "I was hoping you'd call." 2 days later, we sat in a small coffee shop, my hands wrapped around a cup for warmth rather than caffeine. "Your whistleblowing case was significant," Michael said, sliding a folder across the table. "Meridian's environmental violations were egregious. What they did to you afterward was illegal." I laughed bitterly. "Try proving that." "I already have." He opened the folder, revealing documents, emails, timestamps. "They coordinated to blacklist you. That's illegal retaliation against a protected whistleblower." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. "Can we fight them?" "We already are," Michael said, determination in his eyes. "I filed the paperwork yesterday." Over the next few months, Michael became my advocate, my confidant, and eventually, my friend. While the legal battle dragged on, he helped me secure temporary financial assistance and connected me with jobs that wouldn't check references. "Your financial knowledge is extraordinary," he said one evening after I helped him understand a complex money laundering scheme for another case. "Most CFOs couldn't spot these patterns." "Not much use when no one will hire me," I replied. Michael studied me thoughtfully. "Maybe that's not the path you're meant to take anymore." The settlement came 6 months later, not a fortune, but enough to start over. Meridian paid quietly to avoid publicity, with no admission of wrongdoing. "What will you do now?" Michael asked as we celebrated with dinner at an actual restaurant. I'd been thinking about this for weeks. I want to help people who've been displaced, like I was. People who need affordable housing. That's ambitious. "I know how to make money work," I said, conviction growing with each word. "And I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." 2 weeks later, I registered Phoenix Properties LLC, with Michael as the official CEO. We started small, one rundown apartment building in a neighborhood most investors avoided. "No one can know I'm involved," I insisted. "If Meridian or anyone from my past makes the connection." "I understand," Michael assured me. "Your name won't appear on any documents." We renovated that first building ourselves, working weekends, learning plumbing and electrical work from YouTube videos. I calculated every expense, stretched every dollar. The first time we rented an apartment to a single mother escaping abuse, I cried. "This is just the beginning," Michael said, his hand shaking mine. Our relationship developed naturally, even though neither of us felt it at first. From professional to personal, from respect to something deeper. The first time he kissed me, we were covered in paint after finishing the hallway in our second building. "I've wanted to do that for months," he confessed. "What took you so long?" I asked, and kissed him back. Phoenix Properties grew steadily. We focused on buildings in neighborhoods with potential, offering fair rents and dignity to tenants. We earmarked a percentage of units for people transitioning from homelessness, giving them the chance I'd once needed. I kept my involvement hidden. Michael handled the public face of the company, while I managed finances and strategy. We worked perfectly together, his legal mind complementing my financial expertise. One evening, after closing on our fourth property, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Olivia." The voice was elderly, slightly tremulous. "It's your grandmother Eleanor." My heart nearly stopped. "Grandma? How did you find me?" "I may be old, but I'm not helpless," she chuckled. "Are you all right?" "I've been so worried." I hadn't spoken to any family since that rainy night at Vanessa's door. "I am better now. How's everyone?" "Your father still won't discuss you," she said sadly. "Your mother asks about you, but only when he's not around." "And Vanessa?" She paused. "Vanessa presents a very curated version of her life." "I'm sure she does," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Don't judge her too harshly," Grandma Eleanor said. "People who need to appear perfect rarely are." We spoke for an hour. I told her about my work with Phoenix Properties, though not my whistleblowing past. She was the only family member who reached out, and our calls became a monthly ritual. "Brian's business is struggling," she mentioned during one call. "He makes risky investments, trying to maintain their lifestyle." I should have felt satisfaction, but instead felt oddly hollow. "And the children?" "Ethan is so bright, reminds me of you," she said. "Aiden is trying so hard to please his dad. Little Zoe is just doing what she normally does." After we hung up, I sat and thought for a long time. The next day, I asked Michael to look into the apartment complex where Vanessa and Brian lived. "It's coming up for sale," he reported. "The owner is retiring. It's outside our usual neighborhoods, but it's a solid investment." 2 weeks later, Phoenix Properties made the purchase. My sister had no idea her landlord had changed. I never mentioned it to Grandma Eleanor, but sometimes I wondered if she suspected. Michael proposed a year later, on the rooftop garden we'd built for our tenants. "You've rebuilt more than buildings," he said, kneeling. "You've rebuilt lives, including mine." Our wedding was small, just Michael's parents and a few friends we'd made through our work. Sometimes I imagined what it would be like to have my family there. But I was used to their absence. Or so I thought. Then Grandma Eleanor called, her voice weaker than usual. "I've been thinking about family," she said. "About how fragile connections can be. Are you feeling all right, Grandma?" I asked, concerned. "Just tired, dear. But listen, I want you to promise me something. If anything happens to me, come to the funeral." "Grandma." "Promise me," she insisted. "Some wounds need to be faced before they can heal." I promised, never imagining how soon I'd be called to keep my word. 3 weeks later, Michael handed me the phone, his face solemn. "It's about your grandmother. Mrs. Eleanor Chambers passed away peacefully in her sleep," the voice on the phone informed me. "The funeral is this Saturday." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. Grandma Eleanor, the only family member who had reached out during my darkest times, was gone. Her final request that I attend her funeral now felt like a command I couldn't ignore. Phoenix Properties now owned 8 buildings across the city, providing homes for hundreds of people. I'd rebuilt my life from nothing. Yet the thought of facing my family made me feel as vulnerable as I had been that rainy night on Vanessa's doorstep. I promised her I would go, I told Michael that evening. But I'm terrified. Of seeing your family? It's been 5 years, Michael. What if I still feel like that homeless woman begging for help? You're not that person anymore, he said firmly. You're Olivia Westbrook, who built something meaningful from nothing. I spent the next days in turmoil. Part of me wanted to keep my promise to Grandma. Another part wanted to protect myself from the pain of rejection. I need to do this, I finally decided. Not for them, but for Grandma. And for me. I'll come with you, Michael offered. I shook my head. This is something I need to face alone. Seeing his concern, I added, but maybe you could be nearby? Just in case. Always, he promised. The church was filled with flowers when I arrived. I slipped in quietly, taking a seat in the back. From there, I could see my family seated at the front, my father's rigid posture, my mother's bowed head, Vanessa's perfectly styled hair, Brian beside her, with their 3 children between them. After the service, people gathered in the reception hall. I hesitated at the entrance, then stepped inside, remembering my promise. I made it halfway across the room before Vanessa spotted me. Her eyes widened before she recovered. She whispered to Brian, whose head snapped up to stare at me. Then they approached, faces fixed in identical masks of polite surprise. Olivia, Vanessa said, her voice carrying just enough to attract attention. What an unexpected surprise. Hello, Vanessa. I'm sorry about Grandma. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my simple dress. I see things haven't improved much for you. The familiar sting of her judgment made me want to run. Instead, I stood my ground. I came to pay my respects to Grandma. Brian snorted. Funny how family becomes important when there might be an inheritance. That's not why I'm here, I said, surprised by the accusation. Of course not, Vanessa said sarcastically. You just happened to show up after 5 years, right when Grandma's estate is being settled. People were looking our way now. I felt heat rising in my cheeks from anger, not embarrassment. Grandma and I spoke regularly, I said. Every month. This surprised them. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Why would I lie about that? Because that's what you do, Brian interjected. You make up stories to justify your failures. More people were watching. I saw my father notice the commotion, his face darkening as he recognized me. My mother put a hand on his arm, restraining him. Ethan, Aiden, and Zoe stared at me with curiosity. I didn't come here to argue, I said calmly. I came to honor Grandma's memory. Vanessa laughed theatrically. Honor her memory? In that cheap dress? Your clothes barely look like they came from a department store. The mourners fell silent, listening to her cruel words. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. The diamond watch on Vanessa's wrist caught the light, a flashy symbol of the status she valued so highly. Your cheap clothes match your cheap lifestyle, Vanessa continued loudly. Still struggling at your age? Some people are just born for success, I guess. I noticed Ethan watching with obvious discomfort. His eyes met mine with what seemed like embarrassment on his mother's behalf. Just then, I felt a warm hand touch my back. The sudden presence beside me was like a shield. Everything all right? Michael asked calmly. Vanessa's smile faltered. She hadn't expected me to have company. And you are? She asked, appraising Michael's tailored suit with suspicion and approval. Michael Clark, he said smoothly. Olivia's husband. I watched shock register on Vanessa's face. Brian stepped forward, suddenly interested. Clark? As in Phoenix Properties, he asked sharply. That's right. I'm the CEO. Brian's confidence visibly cracked. I've been trying to get a meeting with your company for months. Have you? Michael glanced at me, and I gave a slight nod. He turned back to Brian. Mr. Ellis, I hear your company is facing financial difficulties. Brian paled. That's not public information. We do our research before considering potential business partners, Michael said evenly. Or before purchasing properties. What is he talking about? Vanessa asked Brian. Actually, I believe we already own the building your family lives in, Michael continued. The Brighton Heights complex, isn't it? Brian's face was drained of all colors. You're the new owners? Phoenix Properties purchased it 3 months ago, Michael confirmed. Though the real vision behind the company isn't mine. He turned to me with pride. Olivia is the founder and true owner of Phoenix Properties. I'm just the public face she uses. The silence in the reception hall was deafening. Every eye turned to me, the woman in the cheapy dress who apparently owned one of the fastest-growing property companies in the city, including the building where Vanessa and Brian lived. Little did they know that the homeless woman they'd rejected years ago was about to change everything. The funeral reception froze in stunned silence. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish out of water. Brian stood rigid, his face ashen. That's impossible, Vanessa finally managed. You were homeless. We saw you. Life can change dramatically in 5 years, I said softly. Sometimes you hit rock bottom before you can rebuild. Brian's business smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, this is quite the surprise. We should discuss this privately, perhaps over dinner next week. Michael's hand remained steady on my back. I think now is the perfect time to clear the air, don't you? Especially since we've been indirectly working together for some time. Confusion flashed across Brian's face. What do you mean? Phoenix Capital Partners, Michael said. The investment group that provided emergency funding to Ellis Development 6 months ago when your lenders were about to foreclose. Brian's professional mask crumbled. That was you. I nodded. When we acquired your building, we reviewed all tenant records. I recognized your name immediately. So you've been. Brian trailed off, mental calculations visible on his face. Keeping your company afloat? Yes, I confirmed. Without that emergency loan, you would have lost everything. Vanessa turned to her husband, color draining from her face. Brian, what is she talking about? You told me the business was fine. It's complicated, he muttered. Not really, I countered. Your husband made a series of high-risk investments that failed. His company was weeks away from bankruptcy when Phoenix stepped in. My father approached, his face thunderous. What's going on here? Dad, I acknowledged him with a small nod. I was just explaining to Vanessa and Brian that I own their apartment building. His eyes narrowed. This is a funeral, not a business meeting. I'm well aware, I replied. I didn't bring it up. I came to honor Grandma. My mother appeared at his side, her eyes wet with tears, whether from the funeral or the confrontation, I couldn't tell. Olivia, she whispered. You look well. Thanks, Mom. Ethan sidled closer, studying me with intelligent eyes. Are you really our landlord? I smiled at my nephew. In a way, yes. And Dad's company was going bankrupt? His directness surprised me. Brian tried to intervene. Ethan, that's enough. Yes, I answered honestly. But it's getting back on track now. Vanessa grabbed Ethan's shoulder, pulling him back. Don't confuse him. With what, Vanessa? The truth? I asked. Isn't that what Grandma always valued? The mention of Grandma momentarily silenced her. In that pause, my father spoke. So you've come back to gloat, he said bitterly. To show us all how successful you are despite betraying your company and family. Michael stiffened beside me, but I squeezed his hand. This was my battle. I didn't betray anyone by exposing illegal activity, I said calmly. And I didn't come to gloat. I came because Grandma asked me to. Eleanor knew about all this? My father gestured vaguely at Michael and me. She knew I was happy, that I'd rebuilt my life. She knew Michael and I help people who need housing. She didn't know about the connection to Vanessa's building. That was my private decision. My mother found her voice. Why did you buy their building? It was the question I'd asked myself many times. At first, maybe for security, to know I had some control in a relationship where I once had none. I glanced at Vanessa. But then it became something else. What? Vanessa demanded, her voice smaller now. Insurance, I said. Insurance that no matter what happened, you and your children would have a safe place to live. Even if Brian's business failed completely. Vanessa's eyes widened with realization. You were protecting us? Your children, mostly, I admitted. They shouldn't suffer for adult mistakes. I looked pointedly at my father, whose expression remained stony. So what happens now? Brian asked nervously. Will you raise our rent? Evict us? A bitter laugh escaped me. Really? After everything I just said, that's what you think I'd do? Michael stepped forward. Actually, we have a proposal. The Brighton Heights complex needs renovation. We're converting part of it into transitional housing for people coming out of homelessness. Gasps rippled through the remaining mourners. Vanessa's social circle would not appreciate this development. You can't do that in our building, she protested. What about property values? What about our reputation? Your reputation, I repeated slowly. Is that still all that matters to you, Vanessa? You don't understand, she hissed. We have a position to maintain. A position built on lies, I countered. Designer clothes you can't afford. Vacations on credit cards. A lifestyle that's crushing your husband's business. Brian looked away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Ethan was watching the adults intently, understanding more than they realized. We're not asking permission, Michael clarified. We're informing you of changes to the property you rent. Your lease remains secure, and your rent won't increase. My father, who had been listening silently, suddenly laughed, a harsh, unfamiliar sound. You always were stubborn, Olivia. Just like your grandmother. For a moment, I saw something unexpected in his eyes, not approval, exactly, but a reluctant recognition. She was the only one who called, I said quietly. Every month for 5 years. Guilt flashed across my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened. Vanessa looked at the floor. She believed family should stand together, I continued. Even when they disagree. My father cleared his throat. Eleanor left you something in her will. Her attorney will contact you. I nodded, unsurprised. Thank you for telling me. The tension in the room had shifted. The shock of revelation was fading, leaving uncomfortable truths exposed. Nearby, Ethan whispered something to his younger siblings, their eyes wide as they stared at me. Vanessa suddenly looked exhausted, the perfect facade crumbling. I need to sit down. As Brian guided her to a chair, I turned to leave. I had said what needed saying. Grandma would understand. Wait. The voice belonged to Ethan. He approached me, ignoring his mother's protest. Are you really the same aunt who was homeless? I knelt to his level. Yes. I lost everything once. His young face was serious. And now you help people who don't have homes? I try to, I said. Everyone deserves a safe place to live. He nodded, processing this with a child's straightforward logic. That's good. Grandma would like that. Out of the mouths of babes. Tears pricked my eyes for the first time that day. I think so too. As Michael and I walked toward the exit, I felt the weight of 5 years lift from my shoulders. I had faced my past and found myself stronger than I imagined. Behind us, the whispers had already begun. 1 month later. The Brighton Heights renovation was underway. As Michael and I reviewed plans with our project manager, a familiar voice called my name. Vanessa stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking out of place amid the construction dust. Can we talk? She asked. After Michael discreetly stepped away, Vanessa gestured to the renovation. It'll really help people, won't it? People who need a second chance, I confirmed. Like the second chance you're giving us. She looked down. You could have evicted us. Brian finally told me how bad things really were. I wouldn't do that to your children. Why not? After how we treated you. I considered my answer. Revenge wouldn't heal anything. When I was homeless, I saw how easily people become trapped in poverty, in bitterness. I wanted to build something different. Brian's meeting with financial advisors now. We're selling the vacation house and cutting back. It's a start, I acknowledged. I'm sorry, Olivia, she said, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence. For that night in the rain. For the funeral. For everything. Years of hurt couldn't be erased with a few words, but it was a beginning. I'd like the children to know their aunt, she added. If you're willing. Why did you really come here today? I asked instead of answering. She looked around at the half-finished space. I want to help. I could volunteer when this place opens. Maybe I could learn something. It was the last thing I had expected from my status-conscious sister. We always need volunteers, I said. It's hard work. I'm starting to realize there are more important things than looking successful. A genuine smile replaced her calculated one. Ethan thinks you're a hero, you know. I'm not. I'm just someone who fell and found a way back up. Later that evening, Michael and I sat on our balcony overlooking the city. His laptop displayed plans for 3 new Phoenix Properties projects. Vanessa actually volunteered, he asked, still processing. Surprising, isn't it? Dad called yesterday too. He's trying, in his way. And how are you feeling about all this? I considered the question. 5 years ago, standing in the rain, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. Now I realize I found what truly matters. Which is purpose. Not just surviving, but making survival possible for others. I looked at the city spread before us. There are so many people out there like I was, one crisis away from disaster, thinking no one cares. But we care, Michael said simply. 3 months later, we cut the ribbon on the Eleanor Chambers Center. My family stood together, my father stiff but present, my mother tearful, Vanessa with her children. Brian had started working with a non-profit financial counseling service. As I watched the first residents move in, I remembered the rain on my face, the door closing, the long night that followed. Some people are born for success, Vanessa had said at the funeral. But that wasn't quite right. Some people are born for purpose. And sometimes, you have to lose everything to find it.